That's one of the most important things in life, to surround yourself with positive, dynamic, and go-getter type people, because that type of attitude is infectious. It creates greatness. When you realize that the chain is only as good as the weakest link.
Welcome back to another episode of Founders Club. I'm your host, Dez DeCosta. Today's guest is Benjamin Valencia, a certified family law specialist and co-founder of Valencia-Taghavi Family Law. Ben combines big firm strategy with boutique client service. Keep listening to hear his insights on family law, his commitment to advocating for his clients, and his tailored, holistic approach. Welcome back to another episode of Founders Club. Today I have another very special guest, Benjamin Valencia with Valencia-Taghavi Family Law. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and I'm so excited to hear your perspective of the profession that you're in. We just spoke to Roxana, your partner in the firm, and so I'm excited to hear more about you and your journey on all of this. So can you just give me a broad strokes overview on what you do in your specialization of family law, and just give us a little elevator pitch.
So we basically do all aspects of family law, which covers simply divorce, but also all of the things that come into play during a divorce, which is asset division, child custody, visitation. We also get into things related to domestic violence and getting domestic violence restraining orders for clients that need protection, or defending clients that are being accused of domestic violence. We also deal with a lot of things that come before marriage. We do premarital agreements. We consult with clients before they get married on how to draft the agreements for them, and what suggestions that we may have to make those agreements enforceable later on, so that everyone knows what they're doing in case the marriage doesn't work out.
Got it. Very well-rounded in terms of services goes. And you mentioned asset protection, or at least, guiding people with their assets in these very emotional times. What are some steps that couples can take to protect their assets during a marriage or in the event of a separation?
Well, the first step is disclosure. Like in every marriage, one of the most important things is communications. So everybody needs to know exactly where they stand. And it's one of the things that is a requirement, the very first requirement in a premarital agreement. There needs to be adequate and complete disclosures. So everyone knows what each person has going into the marriage, and not only with assets, but also with debts. We have a lot of people that get married and they don't want to have that conversation regarding their debts, regarding student debts, credit card debts, and all of these things that accumulated before they met that person. And then it's considered taboo to have a conversation about finances, because you're in love and you want to marry this person and you want to believe that this person is responsible and wonderful and everything that you expect them to be. However, we all, make mistakes in our past. And if you don't know that going in, that this person may have hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, that many times affects the marriage, because then that person has those responsibilities and maybe can't travel the way you'd like to travel, or can't contribute to acquiring a home the way that you expect them to, or won't qualify to get a loan for a car, for a home. And so then it starts limiting what the couple can do. And it also puts strain on especially the beginning of a marriage that's already difficult. I've been married for 15 years, and the first couple of years were hard. You're getting to know that person. And if you add, unknown and unexpected financial stress to that, it makes it all the more difficult. So the most important thing to protect your assets and to protect yourself is to make sure that there's adequate disclosures on both sides. With respect to assets, if you don't disclose the assets and then you get married, even if you have the premarital agreement, it will not be upheld at the time that you seek to enforce it, because if the person didn't know what they were giving up, didn't know what they would have been entitled to had they not signed the agreement, the court isn't going to enforce it, 5 years, 10 years down the line, when now the parties are divorcing and the person who's seeking to enforce it says, well, all of this property is my separate property and there's no community interest in it. And the person who's seeking to invalidate the premarital agreement can say, well, I didn't know that you had all this. Had I known you had $10 million worth of assets, I would have never given it up. So the most important thing I would say in a premarital agreement or to protect your assets would be disclosure.
Thank you so much for elaborating on all of that. And I was going to ask, so what happens if they do not disclose? But you perfectly answered that as well. And I'm sure there are so many cases where that does happen and emotions do run high. What are some practical tips that you give clients to help them handle the emotional stress of this process, whether it be divorce or just, whatever they're dealing with?
So it's interesting because one of the reasons that I've been doing family law for so long and am interested in it is the personal part of it. We're not just lawyers; we become our clients' therapists. We become their confidants. We are going through the most difficult part of their lives with them. So I think that the most important thing to tell them is to make them feel that we are here for them, that we're here to support them, and while we are also a sounding board for them to vent and to let us know what their frustrations are, we are also there to be independent people that are going to give them advice based upon our years of experience and based about our knowledge about judicial officers, about opposing counsels, about the law, so that we're not just giving them lip service and telling them what they want to hear, but giving them the ability to be heard, but also giving them advice that they can use on how to either approach the situation, approach their ex-significant other, and approach the judicial process and a judge. So I think just feeling supported and having knowledge is power, and having your clients have knowledge will make them feel better about the situation and approach their case, approach the situation in which they're in from a position of knowledge and strength rather than fear of the unknown.
Absolutely. What steps do you take to make new clients feel comfortable and confident in their decision working with your firm?
So I think the first thing is having them feel heard. So we have an initial meeting in which we don't talk necessarily a lot about strategy, but I like to get the background of the parties, to get the background of the case. How did it start? Who filed first? Has anyone filed? How many children? What is the dynamic? Is there any instance of domestic violence, safety issues in which we have to act immediately? And then once we've assessed the situation, we'll have a follow-up meeting to talk about strategy, to talk about how we're going to approach the situation and what steps we plan to take. And I like to give, in cases where we can, give clients options. Option A, option B, option C. I can give them what my advice would be and the option that I would choose. But as I always tell clients, this is their life and this is their case. So it's up to them on how they want to approach it. Also, I just met them and I just met their significant other. They have been involved in a relationship with their significant other for many years, usually, and they know the other side better than I do. So they also can give insight to me as to how their significant other that they're divorcing will react to certain strategies. And that also is important. And then the third step, once we've figured out the strategy, agreed on how we're going to approach the problem or the situation, is to have a team meeting. Because what our firm does and what we specialize in, and why I feel that what I feel is unique about our firm and why clients choose us, is we put together a team. We hire a forensic accountant if we need to. We hire a child custody consultant if we need to. We'll hire a private investigator if we need to. We have a therapist that we can hire that we've used with our clients to help them get through the process, to help them get through a deposition, to help them get through a hearing. have even personal shoppers that we use at Gucci, at Chanel, some to get this person. Sometimes we have clients that have very low self-esteem because they've been in abusive relationships. They're fearful about how they're going to face the other person in court. And we get them a makeover. We work with personal shoppers, we work with hairstylists, personal stylists, get that together as well. So it's kind of a whole, we like to call our firm like a family law spa. And there are a lot of services and a lot of components that come together to make the team to get the desired result. And nothing happens in a vacuum, and no one person can do it all. And many attorneys, unfortunately, want to, keep that retainer just for themselves. We look at the global approach and try to get the team together to get the desired result rather than focus on just one person doing it.
Wow, okay. Definitely sounds like the multifaceted, all well-rounded approach from what you just mentioned. And I have a follow-up question. Now, this is just more so just based on my own curiosity. You mentioned you asked them a bunch of questions. There's this period where you're just learning about their case, essentially, and who filed first. Does it necessarily matter who filed first? Is it give them the competitive advantage in that case, or does it not really matter?
Well, so yes and no. That's an interesting question. Legally, it does not matter who files first. Um, it in California, we are a no-fault jurisdiction, which means you can get a divorce. It's your right to get a divorce for any reason. The other person doesn't have to agree to give you a divorce. So it doesn't necessarily matter legally, but it usually matters psychologically many times. Many times the person that is filing feels like they're finally finding their voice. Psychologically, they feel like they're maybe shedding some extra weight that they've been carrying around if they've been abused or haven't felt heard in their marriage. Being the first to file many times is significantly psychologically important to them. Practically speaking, the first person who files in such a large county like Los Angeles, you can choose to file in local courts or you can choose to file in the central district. So anyone who's in Los Angeles County can file in the downtown North Hill Street Central District Courthouse, or they can file in smaller courthouses near where they live, such as the Santa Monica Courthouse or the Chatsworth Courthouse or the San Fernando Courthouse. And typically, the pool of judges in the Central District is more diverse and sees a larger amount of sophisticated cases and handles a larger array of cases. So that pool of judges is usually a little bit better. And it's not to say that the district court judges are not just as great, but that is a perceived advantage if you can control where it's filed. And so only the person who files first controls where the case is filed.
I see. Okay, so that's the main point there, aside from the emotional factors. That's the legal side of the house. Okay. Can you share a story about a time when you helped a client navigating a challenging situation that came to a positive resolution?
Yes, so it's one of my proudest moments. A client came to me. Um, she was a mom. She hadn't, had never been married to the father of her son, but they had been in a very, contentious relationship for a long time with a lot of ups and downs. And she had gotten into an argument with him. He called the police, and she had been arrested, and she didn't have any custody of her child. She had a restraining order against her, and had a monitored visits for her son. And we went through a very long process. She did everything that I suggested that she do. She went to anger management classes. She got into therapy. The length of her case was very long. We had many hearings, depositions, very difficult situation. Then we did a child custody evaluation in which we hired custody consultants, a private investigator, did a lot of the things that we had talked about before regarding the team. And the result of the case and the evaluation was her receiving primary custody of her son and of obviously unmonitored visitation. So basically, the flip of how the case began. And she was overjoyed, and it was a wonderful result. And I still speak to her to this day.
Wow, that's such a beautiful moment to, take somebody who pretty much, had the odds against her from what it sounded like from the beginning, but with your help was able to facilitate it with a different outcome completely, just a flipped 180, as you said. These next couple questions are going to be diving into who you are as a professional, talking about your strategies and habits. So to start, what is your typical day and how do you make it productive?
So if I'm awake, I'm working, and that's both a wonderful thing and a terrible flaw. My wife would probably hope that I didn't work as much as I do, but I do always feel like um, I have a duty to my clients. So I wake up checking my emails. I wake up on the iPad, on my computer before I get into the office. I make sure that every single call is answered in the day that I receive it. I answer every single email, every single text. Every single one of my clients has my cell phone, and they text and call at all times, sometimes at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. I've gone to bail a client out from the jailhouse after getting arrested for a restraining order in the middle of the night. I have flown back from vacations early without my family to get to a hearing or when an emergency arises. I think being always on is the way that you have to practice law, especially family law. Family law is very emotional, and there are things that happen very quickly, and they can very quickly get out of control. So to do it successfully, you can't work 9 to 5 or say it's Saturday or Sunday or 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. You always have to be on, on. And I think post COVID, now that everything is virtual and you have the ability to appear virtually if you can't be there in person, if you have the ability to do Zoom, take Zoom depositions, do Zoom hearings, it's even easier, which is also a blessing and a curse. Now, even you can't even say you're on vacation. This past May, I was in Paris, and I had a client that her husband, they were divorcing, but they were still living in the same house, pushed her down the stairs, and she needed a restraining order. And I, got up at 4 in the morning in Paris to do a restraining order hearing over Zoom so that I could make sure that she and her children were safe. And it was my pleasure to do it. Not many lawyers would do it, but that's how I choose to practice law. And that's how I make my days productive. It's by being available to my clients and meeting their needs at whatever time.
I can understand that maybe not all professionals in this field would want to take that on, but that I believe, is just one of many things that sets you apart and sets your firm apart is the taking action, the actionability, but also just being available, the availability of what services you are offering these people in, again, such an emotionally high situation.
And it's actually one of the highest bar complaints in the California State Bar from clients that are complaining about their lawyers or filing claims against their lawyers. It's not being able to get a hold of them and not having them return calls and emails and being non-responsive.
Yeah, especially when people are already stressed. How do you bring your ideas to life?
I I have a very good sense of self-realization. So usually, if I think of something, I just kind of bring it into being by talking about it and figuring out from other people, whether it be colleagues, whether it be professionals, on their ideas and how I can bring those ideas into fruition. I never think that I'm going to do something only with myself. It's usually how can I build whatever it is I'm trying to do with the knowledge and the people that I have around me. So I think that bringing my ideas to life is also just surrounding myself with intelligent, dynamic people that inspire me and that can assist me in bringing my dreams or goals to life. And I think that's one of the most important things in life, to surround yourself with positive, dynamic, intelligent, and go-getter type people, because that type of attitude is infectious and it creates greatness. And when you realize and accept that the chain is only as good as the weakest link, so it's a team effort, and you can't live on an island and expect to get greatness. Greatness comes in numbers and with people around you.
Yeah, I think that's really important to leverage your network, but even before you can do that, perhaps curating your network so that you're always surrounded by, people who can help excel you. And when everybody grows, everybody wins.
Absolutely.
What advice would you give your younger self?
Oh God, we don't have that kind of time. But what I would say is I'm my own harshest critic, and I wish that I would, even to this day, have enjoyed my successes a little bit more. I'm very much a type A person. So when I succeed at something, I say to myself, okay, what's next? So I did this, so now I have to do that, instead of maybe relishing a little bit in the success, enjoying it a little bit, and then moving on to the next thing. I have been very much, okay, I finished this, now I'm on to that. And when I'm finished that, I'm on to the next. And I don't necessarily take the time to enjoy what I have accomplished. Um, but I can't help it. Maybe one day I will, but for now, I haven't been able to successfully do that. But I would definitely tell my younger self, maybe if I had started earlier trying to do that, I'd have gotten it down by now.
Ah, that's really good insight and feedback. Yeah, to relish in the accomplishments that you've succeeded in. But at the same time, I can see it also being a characteristic of yours that had even led to your success to begin with. So, can you tell us something that you believe that almost nobody agrees with you on?
I focus very much on my own beliefs, and I don't think a lot of people agree with a lot of the things that I say, because I'm very much a no nonsense person. I don't believe in a lot of coddling, and I don't believe in a lot of excuse making. And I think um, presently, everyone gets a trophy, everybody deserves praise, and I think that I don't think you get greatness from everybody getting the reward for mediocrity. And I believe that you should just reward excellence, and there's a value in not succeeding, and there's a value from learning that you didn't come in first and that you didn't win the race. I think doing the race is a learning process, and winning or losing is also a learning process. And I think in today's climate, everybody wants to be a winner and everybody wants to feel special. And I don't necessarily believe that that's the way to excel, and that's the way to garner greatness, or achieve excellence. So I believe that there should be a winner and a loser. And I believe there's a value in both. There's a value in winning and a value in losing, and certainly a value in having both. And I don't think that's a very popular opinion in today's climate. That's not how I've raised my children, and that's not how I was raised. And I think that what's happening a lot in the youth, and what's happening in the way that our youth today are either not succeeding or apathetic towards their success or their upward mobility in life is a direct result of changing from a very much competitive nature to an everybody wins and everybody deserves everything.
Or each failure, can also be a learning opportunity. Not only that, but that failures can bring positivity. And,
Absolutely.
we don't usually see it that way in the moment. Sometimes doors do close, for specific reasons that we might not see at that point in time.
I can tell you, Does, that I've learned much more from my failures than from my successes.
What is one thing that you repeatedly do that aids in your success and recommend that others do?
Well, the first thing is make your bed in the morning. I mean, I have a housekeeper, but I make my bed and I make it perfectly with the pillows, and that I believe is number one. Number two, dress for success. I curate my clothing and I have a huge closet that I go in every day and pick something that makes me feel successful, powerful every single day. From my watch to my tie to my shoes, every single there's nothing that is not planned in what I wear. And it's not necessarily only for aesthetic purposes, but I view my clothing as my armor. And that's what prepares me for the battle of the day. And if, in my opinion, if I walk out of the house sloppy or just unkept, I don't feel my best. So I don't perform my best. And I think those are the two most important things that I do every day.
Yeah, I think it not only shapes your mindset, but other people's perception of you, which is just as important, especially in what you're doing, right? And how you do one thing, I truly believe, is how you do everything, how you do all things. I believe in that saying very much, and not everybody might, but I do see that, especially when it comes to reputation and just how you keep yourself tells you a lot about somebody just from the outside.
Yes, attention to detail in all aspects of your life is key.
All right. When you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, when emotions are running high, and I'm sure you do a lot to kind of protect yourself from all of the emotional bombardment of what you do, but what do you do in those cases? How do you protect yourself emotionally?
It's hard because these cases are emotional, as you said, and we all can relate to our clients. You know, I've been married for 15 years. I have two children, so I can relate to a father, I can relate to a mother, I can relate to a husband, I can relate to a wife. I have parents, I have grandparents. These things are all things that unify humans, and that's very much what we do. So there is oftentimes a lot of emotion involved, and as lawyers, we have to try and not take on the emotions of our clients because once we can't see past their emotion and once we've become emotionally invested in the case, then we lose our objectivity and then we start giving them advice or reacting in emotional ways to the case. And then without the objectivity, we can't see the forest for the trees. We can't get to the objective and we can't follow the strategy because we become too emotionally invested. So, what I try and do is I love saltwater fish. So, I have a fish tank in my office and I have one in my house. And I go to it and I stand in front of it and I look at it for, 5 or 10 minutes when I feel I'm getting overwhelmed in a case and just kind of drift off and try to gather my thoughts. I like to meditate. I am religious, so I take a time out and say a little prayer sometimes for myself and for the case and for my client. In addition to that, there are things that I do in my life to manage my stress, which is very high. I have a house in the desert, which I go quite often to try and relax. Unfortunately, it's also turned into another office, but for the time that I'm there, it's a little bit less stressful than Los Angeles. I also have a cabin in Kern County with in the trees, and um, especially in the winter time when there's snow, I feel very much relaxed there. So I do that. I also like to take drives. I have a convertible and a kind of little burgeoning car collection. So I take a drive in my vintage cars and try and relax or listen to music. Um, and those are kind of the biggest ways of stress to relieve stress. Spend time with my family, my kids, in all of those places as well helps.
Yeah, you definitely have curated your life to help manage the high stress that you have to deal with on a daily basis with your clients. But I mean, you've been in this game for a minute, you know exactly kind of what you need to do, and you leaned on your spirituality as well, which I think is amazing. And all right, well, we have reached the end of the interview, and thank you so much for your time, Benjamin. I feel like you've shed so much light on not only what you do and some of the questions that are more obscure that most people don't know go into all of this, particularly the emotional side, but what you guys help with to aid in that, which I really had no idea some firms offer, which you guys really take extra care in helping people with. So thank you for your time. Thank you for everything. And yeah, I really appreciate it.
And thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure.